Good evening. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Gary.
Here.
Pepcorn.
Here.
Preston. Here. Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. A team from the North Dakota Department of Health recently completed a site visit of the Fargo Cass Public Health Family Planning Program. During the visit, the surveyors shared positive feedback regarding the facility, the staff, and the care provided to the clients. Fargo Cass Public Health has been offering family planning services to the community since 1972 and provides pap smears, immunizations, breast and pelvic exams, birth control, health education, and STD counseling, testing, and treatment. Again, they were complimented by the great service to the community. Library. The Wiggle Room at the downtown library has reopened. The teen time at downtown library will be March 22nd, and it is open to teens aged 10 to 18. The Tech Kids Camp for children grades 3 to 6 is March 26th at the downtown library, presented by members of NDSU Society of Women Engineers, and children will learn about engineering through hands-on activity. The Fargo Public Library, in partnership with Grand Forks, West Fargo, Moorhead, and Wahpeton Libraries, will host a Red River Valley Kids Read Project in April that will mark the 25th anniversary of the 1997 Red River Valley flood. The project centers around the Storm Warnings by Elizabeth Rahm. Speaking of floods, the deterministic probability of a flood this year is going to hit 29.5. That should happen this weekend. The only bridge will knock out of the 12th Avenue Bridge, or Broadway's already down because you can't use that. There'll be some inconveniences around the community, but we're well prepared for that type of flood. Today, the comms team is going to produce a video of last Saturday's St. Patrick's Day Parade. Enjoy. Beautiful day for a parade. Everybody had a good time, I think. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March 7th, 2022 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 24?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Gary.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. We have a public comment period at this time. Brandon Krager is up first.
Hi, my name is Brandon Krieger. So, Commissioners, a hot topic that has been working its way through City Hall is the Kilbourne and authentic housing projects downtown. On one side, you have the safe, tried and true Kilbourne. Some see it as an evil empire, and others see it as bringing revitalization to downtown. On the other, you have a newcomer, authentic housing, great ideas, big goals, and big dreams, looking to modernize low-income housing. Both projects have their merits and pros and cons. Tomorrow, the Economic Development Incentives Committee and Renaissance Zone Authority will meet to decide the destiny of the 419 3rd Street South. As commissioner, you represent all of Fargo, even the people who may be living in these future properties. The outcome rests on your shoulders. Authentic housing I view as an incomplete project. I do feel it can be financed. They have proven the financial support, but some details are not practical at this current time for Fargo. The biggest gaffe is not having parking on site or a secured MAP bus route near it. It was told to me that people would walk to the MAP bus central, which is a 10-minute walk, or Uber there if needed during the winter. The electric car share is an idea to compensate, but again, not a done deal. These are not practical solutions to building that is not restricted only to downtown residents. Because MAP buses don't go everywhere yet, cars are still the best option for residents to get to jobs. Also, for those future residents, making them walk to a parkade 2 blocks away is not sensible either. This recent census information released last week showed that 90% of Fargo residents transported by car or carpool. Not having parking is a non-starter for this project because Fargo does not have the infrastructure to maximize the benefits of this project. People will be quick to call it gentrification. I currently disagree. The numbers do not match that statement. The city, Kilbourne, and Authentic Housing all have rent that falls within the $750 range. Authentic Housing has stated it does cover electricity. People will say we need daycare. I agree, but we don't need daycare downtown. My daughter goes to daycare downtown because the other locations were full. It's not fun, and traffic is awful. What we need is affordable daycares throughout Fargo. Lastly, is Fargo in a position of risk on a property? Fargo just lost the ability to construct 32nd Avenue South due to rising costs. Right now, Fargo needs a safe project where it can still flourish as an economy for housing and making sure the vision of downtown is still being met. I'm not here representing one side. I'm here voicing the interests of many Fargo residents and how they want to responsibly direct their city. Fargo is not ready for this type of project yet, but I would urge Authentic Housing to continue its expansion into Fargo and look all over Fargo for areas to build their programs. There is an interest and passion here, and I want to see this B corporation succeed in the Fargo-Moorhead area. Thank you.
Will Thompson.
Will Thompson, he, him, and candidate for the Fargo City Commission. I'm a little disappointed. A month ago, I stood here and said I was encouraged by the opportunity of an extended timeline on the Authentic Housing versus Kilbourne and the opportunities that would provide. When Lloyd Green and MDA were willing to be flexible, the city worked tirelessly to get that done. The city chose collaboration and met in alignment. When it comes to Authentic versus Kilbourne, what I've personally seen is a choice of competition and opposition, which is especially disappointing because when I met with all the relevant parties, there seemed to be excitement about the potential. Now I could talk about the shifting of the goalposts from what was specifically asked for in the RFPs to 1 point, 2 points to 3, and how Authentic has answered the city at every step, and with every step there's been more and more asked of them. But what I want to talk about is what is so exciting about this project to me and what I find so paramount. And that is the environmental aspect, the environmental lens of this. If we're looking at this through an environmental lens, Authentic is the clear choice. Decreased energy use, on-site solar production, electric vehicle rideshare. We cannot continue to not meet what is required of us going forward to create a sustainable city. It's simply not tenable. If you're satisfied with the status quo, perhaps Kilbourne is for you. But I've met so many people that are hungry, so many people that can't afford the price at the pump, so many people that can't afford groceries. For those people, Authentic is the choice because it represents a sustainable future. No one's going to come and magically fix these problems in our country. Nothing is going to happen if we don't stand up, flex our local sovereignty, and make the active choice to materially improve our community and take steps to mitigate the flood that's coming and climate change. We might have dodged a flood this year, but climate change is coming. The clock is ticking. There's still time, of course, for further discussion to get this right. But the time is running out on our delicate climate. And I have to ask, we had 11 blizzards last year, more than we'd ever had in this city. How many blizzards is it going to take before we start making active choices to mitigate what's coming towards us? Thank you.
Max DeVois. Or DeVos.
Yeah, you got it. You're good.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Max DeVos, he, him, and I've spent the last few weeks poring over housing policy of Fargo, and I've come to some troubling findings that I'd like to share with both the board and the citizens of Fargo. As I'm sure you know, Fargo faces a significant homelessness problem, a problem that the city has made applaudable efforts to alleviate in recent years. However, the city faces another closely connected problem that has been left virtually unaddressed. As of early 2020, 11,820 households face what the Fargo city government defines as a severe housing problem, which includes residences that are without plumbing, lack core kitchen appliances, are severely overcrowded, or present a debilitating cost burden to the residents. Of these nearly 12,000 households, more than half of them make less than 30% of the area median index, also known as AMI, meaning that they qualify for what the U.S. Treasury defines as deep subsidy housing. The city has been aware of this problem for an embarrassing amount of time. In 2015, the city commissioned a massive housing report. One of the key findings of this report was, and I quote, "Over the past several decades, the supply of, quote, deep subsidy rental housing has remained largely unchanged, despite substantial growth in Fargo," end quote. The same report stated that the number of deep subsidy housings units needed to double in order to catch up with population growth as of 7 years ago. So, how have we done? Since 2016, the city has constructed 0 new units priced for those making less than 60% of AMI. Recently, a housing plan was approved that is valid through 2024, which states that over the next 3 years, the city has no plans to build any housing priced for those making less than 30% AMI. The city has done projects for less than 60% AMI, but they've left the 30% AMI individuals completely unassisted. In other words, the city has completely turned its back on its most vulnerable residents. For this commission to even consider using the public lot on 3rd Street North to build luxury condos, while your own reports have repeatedly shown that this city is in desperate need of deep subsidy housing, is frankly ludicrous. And a vote for anything other than the authentic housing plan would be a spit in the face to those who need your help the most. Thank you.
Victoria Johnson.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, my name is Victoria Johnson. I am a family advocate. Our organization works to provide support services for families, low-income families, and new Americans. I'm here to speak about the authentic housing. As a family advocate, I always put the interest of those we serve first, and then politics. When we receive a survey from Authentic Housing regarding those need for family that might need their housing, I became very curious to who Authentic Housing is. I never heard of them. I don't know who they are. Who are they? I cannot advocate for housing that I don't know anything about. So I did my research. I did a research to find out what are their finance, who are their lender, what is their experience, how long they've been in business. Are they incorporated in Fargo, in the state of North Dakota? So I went into deeper research. I came empty-handed. I reached out to commissioners, I reached out to the city, because I wanted to educate myself before I can truly stand up here and say authentic housing is the choice. In order for me to do that, I needed to do my research. Through that, I came empty-handed until Friday when I saw the newspaper when Mr. Mayor Mahoney spoke about the loose end and finance. It grabbed my attention and I continued to do the research again. So I finally reached out to Authentic Housing, send them a list of questions, and they respond. They're very transparent with us, give us all the questions, all the answers, including conversation they had with the city, everything the city asked of them, including their potential lenders. Those papers, everything they give us. I was very surprised to see that they have responded to Fargo City with everything they asked for. This is a huge file. They sent everything to us, including conversation. So that made me ask again, what is it that city is looking for from authentic housing? They provide the information you need. So I think the city needs to be transparent with the community and the citizen. What is it that you're looking from authentic housing that you want them to provide to the public? You have to be transparent. They were very transparent with us, open and told us what we needed to know and give us the document. So the city need to be very transparent and tell us what we need to know. Thank you.
Christopher Cohn?
Yes, I'm Christopher Cohn, a Fargo resident. So the city has never had more commissions, committees, and boards. And with that has come an expanding dependence on private email accounts to do public business. I want to point out that the members of these panels are government agents since they conduct public business, though they're not city employees. So I have an economical solution to suggest, and that is that number one, the IS department could set up one email account with a large amount of storage capacity. To keep it simple and inexpensive, they could set up a corporate account offering extra security, example at Google or Yahoo. Two, existing .gov email accounts by default would BCC or blind copy all emails to the city database account. Three, all government agents would be instructed that when using their own commercial email account for government matters, they must BCC their business messages to the database account and forward incoming business email there too. Any email that is not entirely personal would be copied to the online storage account. These three simple steps would produce a comprehensive city database that would provide a valuable archival resource, allow for consistent application of document retention policies, and be fully searchable using search engine technology with which all employees are familiar. Any public records requests for email would be quickly and simply processed through searches of the archive. And I also think we need a policy or policies regarding city agents using private accounts for texting of public business. Since I have a few extra moments here, I would like to say that I still think that we needed a study or look back at the downtown melee of 2020 to see what happened, to see what the police did correct, what they did incorrect. I don't think that's ever been really looked at, and I think it made a huge impact on the city. And that's really something that we should look at. I did watch hours and hours of video of what happened. I wasn't there, but I did see a few crucial mistakes that the police made. And it could be a learning experience for everybody. I don't expect them to do everything right, but we can all learn. Thank you.
Brian was asked to appeal. I may have got the last name wrong, Brian.
Close enough.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm here in support of the wildlife management program. I've been a bow hunter for about 40 years. I've been in the program for approximately 15 years, and in 2021, I was also a work group member asked to review the program. Per the program stats, this program has been successful with 352 deer taken in 15 years of the program. Just to give you some context, the success rate in the state of North Dakota for archers is 38%. In the past 4 years, the participants have demonstrated a 57% success rate. In my discussions with the Game and Fish Department about the program, per the stats, they also view the program as a success. Did you know that the current program required and received a permit from the North Dakota Game and Fish Department? Any of the population management alternatives discussed to date would require a permit from the state of North Dakota Game and Fish Department. Per my discussions with the Game and Fish, they would be resistant to approve any alternative when the city already has a successful program in place. As of November 2021, no one from the city had any communications with the Game and Fish decision makers regarding this program or program alternatives. Recommendations for the program. Increase the education about the program. It's been apparent that there's been some misinformation and misunderstanding about the program and bow hunting. Update the city website. Add a link to the Century Code to make sure people are aware what the program is and isn't. Also add the conditions and constraints that the hunters undergo, such as mandatory education and training. Update the program and adopt the work group and recommendations, such as removing turkeys from the program, the participants mandating mandatory wearing of a safety harness, as well as use of lighted knocks, which at the time the program was conceived, weren't even legal in the state of North Dakota. Also, would like to update the signage for the properties. The current signage identifies that this is an experimental season. Well, newsflash, the experiment is successful. I not only hunt these properties, I hike and I cross country. My primary concerns have always been, did I dress warm enough and are my pants going to get cockleburrs? I've never been worried about my safety. The absence of a program is not management. I ask that you approve the continuation of a good program and make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Thomas.
I'm Richard Thomas, Fargo resident. I see that on the agenda is the Wildlife Management Program for discussion tonight. I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and the several hundred people who signed a petition last year asking that Fargo discontinue the Wildlife Management Program in the Fargo City parks. Now, there was going to be a second study this winter, and I did not have an opportunity to either participate in that study or to audit it. It was not made public that there was an opportunity to do either. I did talk to the North Dakota Game and Fish Department head biologist today, who told me that they had completed a deer count recently, but he said that that did not include the corridor through the Fargo area. He said overall, the state of North Dakota, the deer population is down from what it was in 2000 and 2019. He said that no count was done east of I-29 in the Fargo area. There may be some counts from the deer management program, but these cannot be relied on because the hunter could count the same deer multiple times. I've heard an argument in the past that we need to do this program because for motorcycle safety. In Fargo, deer are more commonly seen in residential areas along the river. The typical speed limit would be 25 miles an hour. Motorcyclists should easily be able to avoid a deer at that speed. And if we're truly concerned with motorcyclist safety, maybe we should look into a helmet ordinance. In more rural areas, we could put up signage that says caution wildlife crossing. I've heard the argument about the high cost to use sharpshooters in Iowa City. I've done research on that and found that in the year that they did that, they killed 90% of the deer. They haven't done it again. I also heard that they had tried the archery program for many years and that they had found it to be ineffective. I've heard the argument that deer will devastate the area where the diversion is being built. I believe that's pure conjecture. We have no idea whether or not that would be good deer habitat. But we must remember that the people who use the nature parks do not want hunting in the parks. We need to keep these parks welcome and safe for the public, and the sign that says it's experimental has shown that the experiment has failed. And the earlier speaker mentioned 24 deer a year have been taken. That's not a success, that's a failure. You should continue to vote against the program and end it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we're going to public input opportunity, item 26, application to transfer Class ABH Limited Alcoholic Beverage License for Advanced Hospitality doing business as Expressway Suites to be located at 4303 17th Avenue South due to an ownership change. Steve Sprague to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. As the Mayor said, this was due to an ownership change. The owner of the Expressway Inn passed away suddenly this fall, and so we had the heirs apply for to have the liquor license, the wife and the two sons, and went through our normal background checks, and there were no issues in the background check, and so it comes to you from the Liquor Control Board with a recommendation of approval.
Is there anyone present who wishes to address the City's Commission regarding this transfer? Is there anyone who wishes to address the Commission? If not, I'll close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Garrick, a second. Roll call, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item B, Legacy 1 7th Edition, approval recommended by Planning Commission on 1/4/22. Growth plan amendment to the proposed Legacy 1 7th Edition from a low to medium density or a medium to high density residential to commercial. Zoning change from an SR4 to a general office with conditional overlay. First reading of the rezoning ordinance and a plat of the Legacy 1 7th Edition. Donald Crest to explain.
There'll be we're just bringing up the PowerPoint here. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Kress of the Department of Planning and Development. This item includes an ordinance prepared by the City Attorney's Office, which is included in your packet. As the Mayor has stated, item 26B is the Legacy 1 7th Edition. This property is located at 6155 24th Street South. This is 25th Street South here, 64th Avenue South here, and some developed residential here. And there's, 64th is the overpass over I-29 is under construction on that street at this time. The subject property is undeveloped. It's this area here. Here we're looking from 25th Street South toward 24th, 62nd Avenue here, and then here we're on 62nd looking north. Just as a point here, there is another undeveloped property adjacent to the north under the same ownership, but that is not part of this project. The current zoning is SR4, which is a single dwelling residential zone. The proposed zoning is GO General Office. The applicant has proposed this general office zone to change to, as their main goal is to develop a daycare serving more than 13 children, and the GO zone is the least intense zone where that land use is allowed by right. And I believe he also plans to develop some neighborhood serving offices on that property as well. To facilitate that zone change, the applicant also applied for a growth plan change. The growth plan currently designates this area as low-density residential. The proposed land use designation would be general office, and the applicant has gone through the process for this growth plan amendment, including holding a public meeting on December 7th, and then we're going to the Planning Commission, now being before your commission. The plat associated with this project, so there's a zone change or growth plan amendment and a plat. The Legacy 1 7th Edition, this is replats Lot 1, Block 7 of Legacy 4th Edition. Keeps the lot there about the same size. At the time this was platted, there was what we call a negative access easement along 62nd Avenue. That is a prohibition for taking any access off 62nd Avenue. The applicant wished to remove that, and our engineering staff found that that was reasonable to remove that at this time. And then the plat also dedicates some additional easements for 25th Street that were acquired after the 25th Street basic right-of-way was dedicated and the street was built. Again, this just happens sometimes. There's outstanding easements, and when platting comes along, we just have them dedicate the easements, have the applicant dedicate the easements. So again, the result of this will be the property will be zoned general office for some neighborhood serving type of development. The applicant, Jason Ide of IDCO, is with us this evening. They wish to address the commission. The Planning Commission's recommendation for approval is stated in the staff report and shown on the screen. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this zoning change? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Daycare center, sounds like that's something we need in that area. Roll call vote, please.
Preston. Aye. Garrick.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Item C, renewal plan and development agreement for tax increment finance district number 2021-04, continued from the 3/7/27 meeting. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a request for a tax increment financing district on First Avenue North. Probably this site is best known as a site of a major warehouse fire that occurred in December of 2020. The warehouse was destroyed by fire. There was actually quite a bit of blight on this site even before the fire that buildings were in pretty poor shape. You kind of see this also shows you the perspective of the site. It's fairly close to the downtown. The next slide, just as an overhead slide, shows the aftermath, the particular location. Again, on First Avenue. The proposal for redevelopment is to develop 90 apartments. There would be main floor parking and apartments above that. It's referred to as the J Street apartment. It's actually 14.5 Street. They've used the term J Street because that was actually the original name of that street before it was given a number. The project also, this would include development of utilities. There's two streets that are needed. The primary street that's needed for this development would be the construction of 14.5 Street with underground utilities would run north and south. This street would not be financed by the TIF funds, but would rather be special assessed. However, the TIF funds would be used under the proposal to construct NP Avenue. NP Avenue is not really adjacent to this site, but it would certainly help with circulation as far as getting snow plows and fire trucks around the site in the future. The cost of the NP Avenue for that one block would be approximately $275,000. That would be primarily street and storm sewer and street lights. I don't believe any, I think maybe they're going to loop the water lines, but no sanitary sewer. NP Avenue kind of dead ends a little bit further to the west into the side of a building, and so there'd be no need to extend that at this time. The developer has requested tax increment financing for $1.3 million. That would be for the cost of final cleanup of this site. There's still foundations remain as well as a portion of the building, some getting rid of poor soils, any contamination on this site, as well as some of the costs of the land. That 1.3 million includes 50,000 that's actually paid to the city for administrative costs that go with this, and so actually the developer receives 1.25 million less that cost. The current value of the property is $319,000, so it's just generating $4,500 a year in property taxes. The new development would be approximately $12 million in value and generate roughly $168,000 a year in tax increment financing funds. The length of the TIF district for the developer's portion would be approximately 9 years. The money for the additional NP Avenue plus interest would be approximately 3 years. So we anticipate this TIF district will last just 12 years. Our financial advisor, I'll just show you first, this is a photo of the existing site, and then I have several photos of the proposed development. You see there'd be main floor parking. They'll kind of come up with a better or different image, something a little less the same as the design happened. This is the floor plan, and so let's see. So anyway, the public PFM, our financial advisor, reviewed this. They stated that the estimated internal rate of return is appropriate given the risk level of this type of project, and based on the information provided to PFM, that they calculated the internal rate of return and coverage they calculated that the project would not be feasible without public assistance. So it passed that but-for test. We're having a public hearing on this. If you have any questions, both Mark Bjornstedt and Kevin Bartram are here. And then finally, if you're kind of curious, this is the results of all of our TIF districts. Commissioner Pepcorn tells me I should bring this slide to every meeting that shows in the long run, these TIF districts that are closed do provide a lot more increment than they did previously. So be happy to answer any questions, and then both Mark and Kevin are here if you have questions of them.
Is there anyone here who wants to address the city commission regarding this renewal plan? Is there anybody who wishes to speak? Close public hearings. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Garrick.
Jim, how much of the TIF is going to offset the cost of the land? Is it?
I think it's in the development agreement. Just let me get that. $790,000.
Yeah, so I was torn on this one until I realized that. So this is what TIFs are for. It's a blighted area. Obviously has a building that's unusable, needs to be cleared off due to a fire. So that's a good thing. But being overly generous is unnecessary. So if this TIF was to go just to clear off the land and make it a blank slate for them to then redevelop, I would have actually voted for it, which is uncharacteristic. But again, being overly generous and offering $750,000 for the purchase of their land, that doesn't make any sense. The people of Fargo should not be buying your land for you, and the fact that you overpaid for it is not our problem.
Mr. Chair.
I should note that, the extraordinary costs are, the demolition will probably be higher than we've had in the agreement with the environmental. It was, in some ways, it's just easier to document the land costs and all the environmental. So they're facing additional risk because they really don't know what those environmental cleanup costs would be. But we are capping it at 1.25. So.
Commissioner Pipcorn?
Just real quick, I just wanted to compliment the developers. It already looks a lot better than it did about 3 months ago. We drove by there last week, and they've removed a lot of the animals. Unfortunately, none of those were located on campus here. Some of them were pretty good. One was a giraffe, one was a giant heifer, so there was a lot of potential there. I don't know what happened to them, but hopefully they found a farmyard somewhere. But it already looks a lot better. This is going to be a great project for that part of the city. With the Renaissance Zone, I would have never predicted that this is the direction that the city would start improving. And so this, we hear about housing in the downtown. That's part of our Go 2030. This is going to have more housing in the downtown, so it's a good thing. And especially if the before and after of this picture of what it looked like before and how this is going to look after, I think it's a great project. And so I'm proud to be the motion maker. Thank you.
Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. Jim, I'm just curious. First of all, I think at some point, I, for one, would like a really specific definition of blight, a really specific definition of blight, because everything's blight, it seems like. But that aside, when we approve TIFs, and this is a great project, but when we approve TIFs, and I've turned a corner on tax breaks, just so everybody knows, when we approve TIFs, though, and we have environmental costs, we don't always know what they're going to find, if there's a contamination or not. So my question is this: if a developer gets in there and that contamination isn't what was potentially there, does that mean they don't get that portion of the TIF?
That's correct. It's capped at the 1.25 million, so they have to show us a documentation of those costs.
So that's absolutely verified and reimbursed, and it's not just theoretical blue sky.
Right, we verify that. I've worked with the planning department to document all these costs.
Thank you.
Mr. Preston?
Yeah, I have to acknowledge that I'm actually partially agreeing with Commissioner Gehrig here. In that I've always had the question, and Jim, you and I have had this conversation more than once, the question about including the cost of land over and beyond the assessed value. And I understand its policies. I'm going to vote for this by all means. It's a great project that needs to be done. but it's a policy issue, and that's where we need to address it, I think.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Garrick,
No.
Strand,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Next item, second reading and final adoption of ordinance relating to term limits for city commission members. First reading 3/7/22. I have to now remember to break this into two motions. Is there a motion to waive second reading at length of the ordinance repealing section 200106 of the Article 201 of Chapter 2 of the Fargo Municipal Code relating to ordinances term limits for the city commissioner members?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion of that? Roll call vote, please.
Garrick,
Yes.
Preston,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Now, is there a motion for final passage and adoption of an ordinance repealing section 2-0106 of the Article 201, Chapter 2 of the Fargo Municipal Code relating to ordinance term limits for the city commission members?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? And just for the public, Nancy, can you briefly just tell us what we're going to put before the public here?
I'm going to look, I believe Eric was going to be present virtually. I'm not seeing that. Is he on? Yeah, Eric is on.
I'm on
to
here
address
if you
us.
can hear me.
Oh, Eric, can you just give us a brief so the public knows what we're voting this, please?
Sure. So what you're voting on right now is an ordinance that repeals the current term limits ordinance. You're doing that to tee up the ball so that what you present to the voters is basically a replacement term limits ordinance with minor adjustments in the language addressing the litigation from last year. So this is an ordinance repealing the existing term limits ordinance, expecting the question be put before the voters at the next city election, June 14th.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Garrick,
Yes.
Preston,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. So now do we have to do, as I would understand, go through this again, A and B? Nancy?
Now is just to approve the resolution.
Okay. Number A is resolution proposing term limits ordinance to the voters. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Garrick,
Yes.
Preston,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Number B, receive and file sample ballot language regarding the term limit ordinance. Is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Garrick,
Yes.
Preston,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item 28, recommendation for proceeding with revising plans for 32nd Avenue South reconstruction project. Tom Knockless is going to explain today. I think Brenda is on a vacation, which she deserved.
Correct.
So Tom has, and his team has worked real hard to come back with a 32nd Avenue option for us tonight. And I think you'll find from his presentation, the engineers have worked very hard on this and a time frame that's very constricted. So I appreciate that, Tom, and go ahead and present.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Like the Mayor said, talk about 32nd Avenue and our path forward for rebidding that project. Just wanted to provide a brief recap of where we're at. We began planning for this corridor way back in 2006. We were awarded federal funds for years 2022 and 2024. Back in early part of 2020, we advertised for an RFP for engineering services, where we ultimately hired Apex Engineering to design this project. We had a number of public meetings throughout the process, initial public input meeting in August of 2020, held an update meeting in October of 21, and then an informational meeting in February of 22. Also want to remind you that back in July of 21, we were in front of City Commission where you guys voted on the environmental dock, and that really set our design configurations, roadway widths, boulevard widths, things like that for the project. We went out for bids on February 11th. Engineer's estimate was about $11.7 million. Unfortunately, we received 3 bids. All were more than 40% over the engineer's estimate. So then we were back here on February 22nd, where the City Commission rejected all bids.
In order to keep our federal funds for this project, we do need to rebid this project in November of this year in order to keep those. So again, recap, city staff and consultant met with the 3 different contractors that bid on this project. I just want to say that they weren't required to, but they did so just to help us out. And we really do appreciate their feedback and their time that they provided. Since those meetings, we organized the feedback and identified what we really felt were the core issues that impacted the project costs. And then we've been meeting internally to develop these 3 options that I'm presenting. So what we learned from the contractors, there's some issues that are just out of our control that we probably aren't going to be able to influence. Some of those things are things you're hearing of quite a bit recently, I would say. And part of that's labor shortages, material shortages, general inflation. We had one contractor make a comment to us that, you know, they feel their costs have probably risen about 30 to 40% from last year. But there are some things we can do that are within our control. So part of that is the project schedule, what we provide for a work zone and therefore constructability, and then the time that we have another bid letting. So diving into project schedule, there was a lot of concern from the contractors about just being able to complete the project on time. So material delivery and time of bid opening were part of that concern. At least one of the contractors said due to their low productivity based on the phasing, they figured they'd have to work 7 days a week with no rain the entire summer to potentially be able to finish on time. Another thing goes with that is phasing. Because the way it was initially phased, contractors would have had periods where they couldn't have performed any work. So a paving crew or an underground utility crew would have had to completely move off site, move back in, move off, move back in. So that of course plays into the risk and cost of the project. And then there was a lot of temporary pavement, multiple traffic control changes with that phasing, and then just a lot of concern about how slow the production rates would have been because the site was so confined. So with the work zone and constructability, I want to talk a little bit about, Main Avenue was a very successful project that we had recently, so I just want to compare it to that in a few instances. So right away, our standard arterial roadway would typically be 200 feet wide. 32nd Avenue is 100 feet wide. Main Avenue, by comparison, was 80. The work area allowed 32nd Avenue as the way we originally bid it, with driving accommodating through traffic on the outside lanes. Really only gave the contractor for some very deep excavation about 37 feet of work area. Again, Main Avenue, the way we closed that and detoured it, it gave that contractor about 70 feet of work area. And then those excavation depths are fairly similar between the 2 projects. So on 32nd Avenue, we're installing a 72-inch storm sewer. And at the deepest spot, it's just over 18 feet deep. Main Avenue installed a 12-inch sanitary sewer, and the deepest spot was about 19 feet deep. So a big part of that site constraint has to do with on-site staging area. So 32nd, as it was bid, there was no room for on-site staging within the right-of-way. So contractors were bidding into their project off-site staging areas where they'd have to bring materials and then they'd have to bring it a piece at a time into the project site. Main Avenue, again, because of how we phased that, they did have a staging area within the right-of-way. Also talked to the contractors about risk and safety. There were some concerns about the anticipated conditions. We have fairly deep existing storm sewer there. There was worried about how the backfill material could potentially fail with their excavations as part of this project. And that there was concern over risk to the traveling public going through the corridor with that as well. And then also just rain delay, there wouldn't be enough space on site to dry the material in the event of rain. And then again, time of the bid letting was part of the feedback that we got. So again, the general statement we got is sooner that we can bid a project, the better we are. Of course, a contractor, the more flexibility we give them, more time we give them, the more it will lower costs. The issue is we always try to balance that with impact to the public and what that duration might be. So again, they just talked about, time of bidding could play into the ability to procure materials, get subcontractors, laborers, and then the time that this project was bid, it also limited the number of quotes that we received and also bidders on the project. So we brought back 3 options. I just want to make this clear. All 3 options ultimately give us the same project. It's the same project design. We get the same product in the end. It's just the method in which we construct the project differs. So option 1 would be go back out and bid the same project that we already bid, which provides one driving lane in each direction on an existing roadway. We feel that this would have to be bid in 22 and all work take place in 23. Option 2 would be to maintain one driving lane in each direction through the corridor, but in order to do so, we'd have to utilize the boulevard area. We think that we could bid this in 22. Unfortunately, most of the time spent in 22 would be building those temporary driving lanes, and then all work would likely take place in 23. Option 3, we'd completely close the roadway to through traffic and we'd reconstruct in phases, similar to what we did on Main Avenue. We think in that option we could bid it again in 22, complete some of the work here in 22 yet, and then have the remainder of the work complete in 23. So just to dive a little bit deeper into those options, option 1, like I said, rebid as current. The pros of that, we provide one driving lane through the project area the entire time. It's minimal plan changes, and then we really just have to update the timeline for construction and then rebid. The cons, we're really not addressing hardly any of the core issues that we receive feedback on the contractors. So because of that, we wouldn't expect any meaningful cost savings with this option. Although we would maintain traffic through the work area, from the feedback that we got from the contractors on how their operations would have to work, there would be a lot of construction traffic through the corridor, which would lead to greater congestion. And then again, we think we'd just see additional inflation costs that wouldn't be helpful. Option 2, I'm going to spend a little bit of time just on this slide to help you try to understand it. What we'd have to do, just because of our space in this area, we'd have to build temporary driving lanes in the boulevards. And I'll talk a little bit about everything we'd have to do, but as you can visualize down the sidewalk corridor, we'd have to take out the sidewalk, we'd have to take out the trees, we'd have to relocate street lights, traffic signals, fire hydrants, private utilities. It's not my favorite option, but it is an option. So again, a pro, we would be able to maintain one driving lane through each direction through the project area. It does provide a wider work zone to the contractor, provide some on-site staging area for the contractor, and then it would push traffic a little bit further away from the work area. Cons, a little bit more substantial plan change. It would have to eliminate all boulevard trees on the project. It would eliminate all sidewalks during construction. Will likely create some drainage issues. And then it would probably reduce some costs, but it would certainly increase costs in other areas. We'd need to likely acquire additional easements. We'd have to remove the trees. Like I mentioned, we'd have to relocate private utilities, signals, streetlights, and hydrants. We'd have to pave the boulevards and then remove and reestablish that. There's a lot of sidewalk that we were hoping to save on this project, but we'd have to remove that and replace it. And again, not much work would be done this year other than just building those temporary facilities. Option 3, again, this option is to close the roadway and reconstruct in phases. This slide is kind of busy, or that image is kind of busy, but I just want to highlight, the blue area is our work zone from the east side of 32nd Street to the west side of 22nd Street. And you can see this area has pretty good connectivity in adjacent corridors, and that's one benefit that we have with this option. So the pros of this option, it does provide the widest work zone. It would provide staging area within the right of way. We would overall expect to see a faster completion with the style of phasing. We'd be able to save the boulevard trees. We'd be able to maintain pedestrian access. This one does really address the core issues that we heard from our contractors, which being the project schedule, the work zone, and constructability, and then hopefully the time that we're able to bid it. The contractors, from what we heard, figured this would be the lowest risk to them and the safest option. And then we would expect it to decrease project costs. There are some cons associated with this as well. Biggest con is we need to close the road in phases and detour traffic. Luckily, there are some good adjacent corridors for local access. Plan revisions, we would expect to take about 3 weeks. One of my biggest concerns is this is not what we had previously communicated with the public, so we need to do that if we went with this option. And then there's one site where we'd have to pursue a temporary cross-access easement to maintain access to a business. So here's a potential timeline, hoping to get a decision tonight so we can move forward. Again, the time we need to update plans depends on the options. Whatever we decide tonight, then we need to go communicate that with the public. Hopefully can submit plans to the North Dakota DOT sometime in April. We'd be shooting for a bid opening on June 10th with the North Dakota DOT. Hopefully have contracts late June, early July. And then again, like I talked about earlier, it depends on the option when we'd be able to do the work. So with that, happy to answer any questions that anyone has, and otherwise have a recommended motion on the screen.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
So Tom, can you put up the map with the red line on it? Because the thing that jumps out at me is I just remember 19th Avenue, that was a disaster. It hurt a bunch of small businesses, that one right there. And so my concern is the small businesses on the right-hand side, there's a whole bunch of them on those two blocks. And to me, I would have to see, or I think we would like to see what your proposal is, because that's going to have the biggest impact. Those businesses that are on 32nd, and to me, when you close the whole thing, I just think of 19th Avenue, and that did not go well. And so, I think when you come back to us to have a better proposal as to how that can keep those businesses viable, because this is a heavily trafficked area, and to me, when you talk about closing that, I'm very hesitant about that, because I don't think that's a good solution, because that's heavily used by lots of people, not just in that neighborhood. And so I guess that's my number one concern: the businesses along 32nd, and how you will help them to survive. Thank you.
Commissioner Preston.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One of them was related to the public input, and if you're asking for approval tonight, how would you incorporate the questions, the concerns from the businesses?
Yeah, I think that's what we'd be looking to do. So again, if we move forward with option 3, where we're going to be detouring traffic, again, we'd hold some public input meetings. Again, looking for that input of what could we do during that process that would be beneficial. To Commissioner Pepcorn's point, we learned a lot from 19th Avenue, and we've made a lot of changes in these types of projects since that project. And we've also partnered, Flint Group has worked pretty closely with us on recent arterial projects like this. They were very helpful on Main Avenue, where we created a lot of engagement with the public to be able to continue to support those businesses. So we again have a lot of lessons learned there that we'd look to implement here as well. But a big part of it is that we would have to try to get some of that input from the public on what they think could be beneficial if we move forward with that phasing.
Tom, could you show which phase would be done this year? You had that one map. You didn't show it on your presentation, but I know you showed it to us earlier.
Yeah, so these next three slides, I think it is, these are my ideas. It's something we'd really have to vet if we move forward with this option with our consultant team. But this is somewhat how I would envision it. We would likely reconstruct in 3 phases. So 22nd Street is able to stay open for the entire time. 25th Street, we would reconstruct in halves. So we would always keep a north-south movement at 25th Street. And then, but phase 1 ideally is what we'd be able to accomplish this year.
Mr. Chairman, I had one more question too.
Sure, Commissioner Preston.
So how does the engineering or the engineer's estimate work? Are you able to revise that, or is that locked in because of federal funds?
No, we would be looking to revise that. So what we do is, once we have direction, we'll go back, we'll start redesigning, and then an updated engineer's estimate would come through commission. So we would revise the engineer's report.
Commissioner Garrick?
You buried the lead for me. Like, this is the picture I wanted to see, because my question was the same as Dave's, is there connectivity that makes for feasible detours? And I think that having one lane for a longer period of time would be extremely frustrating. for people there, because that's going to slow down traffic dramatically, especially in the morning and in the evening. So if I would have seen this right away, I wouldn't have had any questions. So I'm going to make the motion, the suggested motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Strand, did you have anything?
I did. I'm just curious, Tom, and I don't know, do these contractors work at night?
So here's what I'd say. There are times where our contractors do perform work at night. There's been times where things, usually it's water tie-ins, sewer tie-ins, things like that, where we have reduced flows or reduced impact. Most of our contractors are not set up to perform work at night. Likewise, our staff typically is not set up to perform work at night. And the reason why is that most of our staff is managing or overseeing several projects. And so the ability to oversee or an overnight project and a daytime project just doesn't work.
Does that mean it's impossible?
Nothing is impossible.
Because that's what a lot of cities do. You know, they have their construction going on at night. And I'm just curious why we don't explore that.
So what I'd say is the benefit of performing work at night is typically lower traffic. In a situation like this, we could do that, but production rates usually fall at night, and safety concerns increase at night with work at night. So if we're going to detour the route, there isn't a lot of benefit to do the work at night. Likewise, if we were going to try to perform work at night in order to have fewer vehicles in the area, the issue is we haven't really hit those core issues like that confined work zone.
Mr.
Just one more but we do have incentives for early completion, and so there are things we can do to encourage them. The other thing is it stays light out till 10:30. So there's a lot of work you can still get done, and they do work later while it's light out. And so to me, that's kind of their decision, not ours. And so those early incentives that could help speed up this process. And so and would those be included in this, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'd say is, initially we had up to $500,000 incentive, $10,000 a day. The message that we got back from our contractors is we dangled a carrot no one could reach, right? So it didn't really entice anyone to go after that because they didn't think it was achievable anyhow. If we change our phasing, we'd also probably reevaluate what we're providing for incentive, and that would be part of that engineer's report that comes back to commission.
And the difference of 19th Avenue in this area for the neighbors that live in the area, there's access behind, there's good roads behind it, especially behind Starbucks. There's everybody that turns there in the morning. So many of us in that area, there are areas, alternative routing. And I can agree with Commissioner Pepcorn on 19th Avenue, there really wasn't that. So a lot of businesses had a harder time getting people into their business. There wasn't really a good access. So I think once we explain it to the neighbors, we have very popular sites each side of that road. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. One last question is, if we were to, is there any consideration for giving various alternative options in case we keep on this path of skyrocketing costs and limited abilities to do things within the projected estimates? Are there some options we can move in and out of the project that might give us that room to still continue with the project while paring back?
I'm going to try to answer that this way. So I used to be a contractor. I used to bid projects. The more flexibility, the more time you can give to a contractor, likely the more contractors you're going to entice to bid a project, and the better bids you're going to get because of it. Again, the balance of that is, especially in a phasing like this where we say we're going to close the roadway and we're going to detour traffic, we want to really limit that duration as much as possible and yet still make it feasible to the contractor to not just drive up to their bid. That's a really big challenge that we face, because we could give a contractor 4 or 5 months to complete each one of these phases, and it would be much more appealing to them, but our public would not be very happy with us at the rate at which the work takes place and the inconvenience that they would face. Hope that answered your question. I'm not sure if it did.
Well, there's turn lane issues and there's other aspects that were part of this project that maybe could give us some versatility is what I'm wondering. My concern is that I don't know if going forward, we might find this is the least expensive option we have in future years. Even if it's gone to the point where it's 40% or above the bids, that's maybe a path we're on where next year it's even gonna be more, and the next year more, next year more. We might regret we didn't do this now, and I know we're stuck with statute, but we need to get this done.
Well, the other part of that, Tom, changed the pricing on the bid, John, because now we know the bids are higher for concrete and steel and different things. So his actual engineer's estimate's going to be different. And he's going to put into the aspect of their increased timing, different things that they've done on how this project is done, which the contractors have told them would drive the price down. So that's part of the issue. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Gary?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Discussion of the Wildlife Management Program. Commissioner Pepcorn.
Mike's going to start us
Oh,
off.
Mike Redlinger, I'm sorry.
I'll be very brief. Good evening, Commissioners. I just wanted to provide a brief status. This item returns to the Commission's agenda tonight by virtue of how it was tabled about 90 days ago. I would just say that there's some discussions are ongoing with the Game and Fish Department in North Dakota, archery club called Sand Hills Archery Club, and the Park District. Staff would just request that this item be held over for 60 to 90 additional days for these discussions to continue. So no action requested tonight. We ask that this just be held over and continue to be on the table.
But don't we need a motion to extend it because it was 90
correct.
days? So is your favor, you want to go another 60 days, or what is it?
If we can get 90, we'll take 90, but if not, but I think we're making progress, but we need a little more time, so I apologize.
I'm just saying the deer licenses typically go June 1st, so 60 days would sync us up a little bit with that as far as if it goes through April, May, June. April, May would be 60 days.
That's fine.
Can I have a motion?
If it's okay, I'll make the motion for a 90-day extension.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Thank you.
Recommendation for interim finance director, Bruce Grubb, to explain? Or is it Mike? Is it you, Bruce? Greg said, let's bring you both up.
No, happy to. Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. And as I'm sure you've all heard, Finance Director Kent Costin's last day of employment will be Friday, April 1st. Be kind of a sad day, but we are in the process of selecting a predecessor, but we won't complete that process before Kent leaves us. We're looking at early April right now. So until the new finance director joins us, we would like to appoint an interim finance director to serve in that capacity until the new director is on board. And our recommendation is to appoint Steve Sprague, who currently serves as city auditor. He is not a candidate for the full-time position of finance director, but he is a 23-year employee as city auditor in all those 23 years, so has considerable familiarity with the city commission and the finance department, as well as other department heads. So we think it would be a great help getting us through the selection and hiring process for the new finance director. Just as an update, earlier today, we conducted our first round of virtual interviews with 4 candidates. We have a 5th scheduled for a first round virtual interview on Thursday, and then plan on inviting the preferreds back on March 31st for face-to-face interviews, and then hopefully can come before the city commission with a recommendation. So that's the schedule, but
The commissioners wanted to know the change in pay during that time, Bruce? It's in the memo, but it's grade 24, step 5, which is...
it's grade 24, step 5. It comparatively, today, Kent is paid at a grade 24, step 11.
Okay. And this, to Commissioner Greg's question, anticipated hopefully 60 days or 90 days. The candidates are final, were interviewed on March 31st, and then reasonably they may not join us for 2 months. We don't know that, but Steve has offered to help us. Budget time is coming right now, and there's some other grant and issues that we have that the finance department has to get out this month, so Steve will be very much a part. Commissioner Strand.
I'm just curious about the national, or however we've searched for candidates?
We cast the net wider than we typically would, and we utilized some advice from our DEI director, Terry Hogan, to hit some national publications that we haven't in the past. So we felt like we really did cast a wide national net here. It's just recruiting for positions is difficult at this point in time. We're just finding that out.
The good thing out of that, Commissioner Strand, is many of the financial candidates commented on how well Fargo is run when they looked into the financial department and the awards that we've received. So it was nice to hear a compliment. They thought the commissioners ran a tight ship. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand.
Yes.
Garrick.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 31, resolution to show support for Ukraine's fight for democracy. Commissioner Preston to explain.
Yeah, if I could indulge the commission to just read the resolution so that people that don't have it in front of them can hear it. I'll make a motion to adopt, and then if there's a second, we can have a little more discussion. Whereas Fargoans have family and friends who are caught in the conflict in Ukraine or are fleeing Ukraine, and whereas the Russian invasion into Ukraine has been a horrible event for all of us to watch over the past weeks. And whereas the city of Fargo contracts for services with Baker Tilly and with potential other companies which continue to do business in Russia. And whereas United States has placed heavy sanctions on Russian businesses, oligarchs, and political leaders to inflict economic pain in an effort to stop the Russian aggression. And whereas the state of North Dakota is removing investments from Russian companies in order to defund the Russian aggression. And whereas Ukraine is fighting with all their might to save their democracy. Therefore, be it resolved, the city of Fargo will communicate to Baker Tilly, urging them to pull their business out of Russia until the day the Russian military and political appointees leave Ukraine. And furthermore, the Fargo City Commission directs staff to identify all the other businesses with which we have a contractual relationship, still doing business with Russia, and communicate the same. And furthermore, the City Commission directs staff to examine any and all city investments for ties to Russian companies and disinvest in those companies. And Mr. Chairman, I would move to adopt the resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
So if I could just give a little background. I think all of us have been watching this with horror, actually. And I personally know some people that have family that are in harm's way. That's what got me so concerned. And I'm sure there's others in the city of Fargo that are in the same place. So wanting to make sure that we are showing our support for what both the federal and state level is trying to do, and we do our own smaller part, which is looking at our investments. Now, let me clarify. The communication, and Baker Tilly just happened to be one of them that was identified as, and I believe they're starting to make some effort to remove their business from Russia, but just encouraging them is basically what this letter would be, urging them to probably speed up and or just pull out of Russia. That would be true with other contractual arrangements that we have with companies. This does not impact, nor was it intended to impact, any other companies that happen to be in Fargo and do business with Russia. Talking only about those that we have contracts with. So that's the intent.
Any other comment? Roll call vote?
Preston.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Garrick.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Any other business? John, you don't have anything that's come up from last week? Thank you. Well, enjoy. Move to adjourn?
So move.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.